What's up, Cinephiles? There's a new indie gem that's now streaming on Amazon Prime Video. The movie is called Sound of Metal, directed and co-written by Darius Marder. The movie stars Riz Ahmed as Ruben, a metal music drummer whose life suddenly capsizes overnight when he learns the news that he's about to lose his hearing. His doctor even prescribed him to stop listening to loud music, and as a drummer, loud music is what he does for a living. So this is about him trying to adjust into this new reality, to this new normal, so to speak. So this is gonna be a tough journey. So before I begin with my review, why don't you guys do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to us for weekly reviews of movies, TV shows, and video games. Please help us reach that 1,000 subscriber mark. Now onto the review. As I've said, this is gonna be a fascinating and frightening what-if scenario. And honestly, these days to have a truly relatable protagonist is really hard to come by. I mean, you can really relate to the story of this character here, whether you're hearing or not, whether you're a musician or not. This movie has a sense of empathy written all over it, from the performances to the direction to the sound design, which I'm gonna discuss in detail later because sound design is really the highlight of this movie. But as a whole, you can tell this movie is not some sort of a half-assed attempt to tell about stories of the subculture of the deaf community. This is the directorial debut for Darius Marder here, and he really proves that he's going to be one of the directors to watch out for because he really juggles the drama and the tension. And normally when it comes to this subject matter, the often choice is to lead it on a melodramatic path. So for those of you who didn't like Ron Howard's Hillbilly Elegy, I can tell you that this is something that you're going to enjoy more because it has more nuance all over it. This is going to be a mature and thoughtful depiction of a chaotic journey of a drummer whose life is taken away from him. And honestly, when you look at it, this movie doesn't really wallow on self-pity and the self-destructive behavior. This is about a man trying to move forward as much as he can with this wrong perception in his head. This movie took me to a roller coaster of emotions because it's profound, it's uplifting, and it can be frightening. And in the end, without being too preachy, it also gives you the importance of being able to hear. And honestly, my hearing is something that I won't take for granted after watching this movie. And also the value of silence. And Riz Ahmed here is just spectacular. He lets us into his character's mind as we try to identify with his struggles, all the internal conflicts that he has. And you can tell that this actor really researched for the role because there are a lot of subtle choices that he does to sell the genuineness of this character, from the moment that his eyes widen or his reflexive swallow when he hears the news that he's about to lose his hearing. For a character that is so intense, this is not the conventional method that one would opt to go to. Some would go for a loud, broad range of emotions, but he goes for a restraint approach here, which is kind of effective because just looking on the eyes of Riz Ahmed here, you can see the sadness registering in him and everything just feels so believable. Whomever he is at that moment, we're going to believe it that and we're going to buy into that. And also you have to look into the character arc of Ruben here because watching this movie, it made me realize that hearing and listening are actually two different things. So in here, his hearing is something that he can no longer restore. He can only maintain what he has. And on the other hand, listening entails accepting and doing the advice that is given by people who actually know more about your condition, like his counselor here, played by Paul Raci. The same thing is advised by his girlfriend here, played by Olivia Cook, who also gives a fine performance because looking at the relationship that is portrayed here, it's also one of the interesting highlights of the movie to see these two codependent people being bound together by music. And take that music out of the equation, it will really be a struggle for Ruben to disassociate his life into a more sustainable one. And just by face value, Olivia Cook's character here has scars on her arms, which indicates that she's inflicting pain to herself. And looking at the chest tattoo of Ruben here, the one that says "please kill me," so that's also indicative that both of them are actually harmful for each other. They have a nomadic lifestyle, they live in this RV, and also that added layer that Ruben is actually a recovering heroin addict, and triggering traumas like this can lead to relapse. And when you relapse, you will just further destroy yourself in the process. So he really needs to be admitted in this rehab facility. So we're going to see more of that on the second act. And when we got there, as suggested by the trailer, this is also where the movie shines because we don't have a full-fledged depiction of a deaf community nowadays. So it's nice to see a lot of deaf actors taking roles in this. I even saw Lauren Ridloff from The Walking Dead playing as a sign language teacher, and as a whole, the movie feels inclusive because they have included close closed caption subtitles here, so both audiences, the hearing and the non-hearing, can enjoy this movie. And in a way to put you into the shoes of the deaf people, the movie really shines because of its sound design. Because most of us think that deafness is equated to silence, when in reality it is actually far from that. Sometimes it feels like you're being submerged underwater and you just hear these voices above you. Sometimes it's just a shrill of a high-pitched noise. And why am I saying this? Like, I know it because I've experienced it while watching the movie. This movie brought a mix of distorted sound and muffled voices to further engulf us on the experience of what it's like to lose your hearing. I think the sound design team here, led by Nicholas Becker, is also the one who's responsible for the movie Gravity. So that is really an amazing job, because it's rare to have a movie these days that utilizes the sound of silence so effectively and so immersive. So yeah, I wish that I'm seeing this on Dolby Theater, but those of you who are staying at home like me, I really prefer you to use headphones while watching this movie, because this is going to be an intimate movie experience. This is not something that you play on the background. It's not going to be conducive to distractions, and I say go watch it alone with your headphones on, so you will be completely enveloped by this amazing, spectacular sound design. And also, there's one thing that I've learned from this movie, because I feel so dumb not knowing how hearing aids or those cochlear implants actually work. They don't necessarily improve your hearing, they only trick your brain into thinking that you are, so the sound won't be the same if you're hearing. So the film also let its audience know what it's like to have a hearing implant stuck in your head. I can't say for sure if they nailed that right, but it's another surreal experience for me. And also, I didn't know that there's like a conflicting school of thought / belief when it comes to deafness. You can see in the perspective of Ruben here that he wants this implant so bad that he thinks deafness is a problem that can be fixed, which in a way you can liken it to an obsessive behavior of an addict. So it's nice to see those parallels go together. And on the other hand, Paul Ratchie plays the mentor. He thinks that hearing aids or those implants are somewhat of a betrayal to the deaf community, because being deaf is not a liability. He sees deafness as an ability, as a chance to open up to other forms of communications like sign language. In many ways, you can think of that as a superpower, so it really feels empowering to the community. But that is not the central meat of the movie here, because actually the movie takes a different path, and I'm actually pleasantly surprised on how the film subverted our expectations on the third act. Normally with these disability films, the projected trajectory of the character would have to be a triumph in the human spirit, something that's kind of a cliche and, you know, something that will please the audience. But you know, this one definitely takes a path, a route that's kind of unique but more attuned and realistic, considering the personality and the beliefs of Ruben here, because slowly by slowly find himself integrating on that facility, but he doesn't necessarily share that philosophy with them. And so when it came to the ending of the movie, I was completely stunned, considering that the opening scene here is a heavy loud metal music, and that heavy metal music, those blast beats, dwindles throughout the film. So it's quite surprising that the movie ends on a note of silence, which you can either interpret as either rewarding or heartbreaking. Personally, because I'm optimistic, I would like to think of that as rewarding, but there's a certain look in Ahmed's eyes that you can tell that this character has been changed forever. This character is no longer the same person from who he was before. So I think it's kind of a win-win situation for me that he learned something from this experience. And in a way, because the movie has so convincingly put yourself into the shoes of that person, it also works as a transformative experience for the audience, which is a magical thing for me. And normally when it comes to films with ambiguous ending, it's going to be a tough sell for me, but in here they really landed that note perfectly. I just think Sound of Metal has a lyrical beauty in it. The story is so gripping, and when you come to realize it, this is a story of a troubled man who's trying to find inner peace in this whole pilgrimage. So I think that's wonderful. I do hope that this movie gets noticed by the Academy, most especially the performance of Riz Ahmed here. I think this is one of those films that everything just came together, so I'm giving this a perfect score, a 5 out of 5. But how about you guys? What are your thoughts about this movie? If you haven't seen this one yet, I highly encourage you to do so. If you enjoyed watching this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to us for weekly content. Thank you so much for watching. Until then, see you on the next one.